awesome.
How's your parallax, your framing?
I think we're okay there.
One of my first assignments as a young filmmaker for a company out of Wichita called Walterscheid. We did a hamburger ad for a major chain. They had their Big Mac, and I filmed it with a fisheye lens, I remember, on my 16 mil, and didn't cook it really. I just kind of darkened it on both sides, and it looked, I thought, pretty big. So I show it to the execs, and they say, "Oh, it doesn't look big enough." And I said, "Oh, no, it's raw, and it's a fisheye lens. I don't know. I don't have any other tricks in my book." So I went back in, and they sent me the 3 or 4 sizes up. I think it was 50% more meat. And again, I didn't cook it, and I used the fisheye lens and cooked it. And they finally said, "Oh, that looks okay. We'll accept that one." So I got a rude awakening at an early age, the reality of marketing in America, and some of the things that we're buying aren't quite what they appear to be.
I just felt like so much of the advertising that I was producing and contributing to was generally just lying to the people, just getting them to overconsume. It was the era in America when the hippies were in charge, and I became a hippie in a sense and went on the hippie trail, but I happened to take my 16mm cameras with me.
And there was a big migration of young people going to India, remember?
Right, yeah.
There was a lot of buses and a lot of movement. It'd be like, a pilgrimage to San Francisco or something, a lot of European kids, English.
It was kind of something to do at the time.
And then we got on the bus and kept going and got to Afghanistan, and as Will said, and I both said, it was just visually so bizarre, such a weird place.
Hello, my captain.
When I got to Afghanistan, I was so excited by the nomads. It was the largest nomadic tribe left in the world. 6 million people with no deformed ones, no fat ones, and there was physically nothing wrong with you. If you live to be 14 and reproduce, never having had a vaccine, never having seen a doctor, never having access to any kind of medicine, you physically have to be a different person than our pampered Western ways. I was stuck in an area that wasn't very popular for Westerners. It was the heart of the Pashto tribal territory, the Khatan. And I did something different than most cameramen, and that's something that not that many European journalists or American journalists want to do, but I submitted myself to their culture.
Will and I really made an effort from the first day there to try to blend in, to try to be as much of a local as we could be, from our clothing to our eating habits to, how we sat, the squat. I mean, everything.
There's a lot to learn.
A lot to learn
about the culture, and to ever feel comfortable and really embrace it takes time.
Yeah. Do you remember how to tie one?
Oh yeah.
Here's a nice one. Give it a whirl. This is quite a tip. It's 30 here. You can take the coat off and get the turban tied, then we'll put the coat on. It's been 30 years since he's put a turban on. So we'll see if he can still.
Wow.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah, you never.
Yeah, he's got the movement. Yeah, he's got the movement.
Something like that.
That was always
easier
the hardest part, isn't it?
without your hair. See,
the hat
you usually shave your hair.
Yeah, and not having hair. Yeah, and here, put the coat on.
And how did they use these silk coats?
Just for warmth. I mean, the nomads used them to herd with, and they'd be out there at night, and they'd use it like a tent to kind of keep themselves warm.
Protection.
You don't put your arms in. You know, the arms don't go in really. Or they can, but they just put it on like that.
Well, how's it feel?
Oh, it's been a while.
It actually takes me 6 months to get into costume to go over there and be believable. In '01, after the bombing, I felt like, you know, I could go over there and show the Afghan people as something other than what we perceive them as being, terrorists.
Now with all the changes in Afghanistan, and it was so different when he was there. And, you know, I don't think people see it as it was back then now, because they just think of it as the war and the, you know, Taliban and all the terrible things going on. But it was, you know, at one time a very, you know, amazing country. And so this kind of gives a little more insight of what it used to be.
I think kind of everyone in our family has like a soft spot in our heart for Chris, because we all kind of live vicariously you know, through him. If it wasn't for him, you know, I'd be pretty much your typical, you know, Midwestern kid and not have experienced any of that stuff. I think he's kind of given me, I don't know, made me more open-minded and, you know, exposed me to stuff that I would have never, ever seen. You know, I would have just gone with what's on the news and, you know, what the media told me or what, I don't know, our leaders say. So, you know, it's kind of nice to have a different perspective.
The Afghans, let's say the Pathans. Let me clarify that, because I know nothing about the other tribes. They're the dominant tribe in Afghanistan. There are 5 tribes: the Pashtuns, the Azoris, the Turkmens, the Baluch, and the Uzbeks. And the Pashtuns make up 60%. So they've been in control since the beginning of time. And it's an interesting domain because 1947, the British and the Americans in their collaboration to create Pakistan and separate the Hindus from the Muslims took Pashtunistan and cut it in half. The Duran line, as they call it, literally goes straight down the middle of their country. And their country goes all the way north to China and all the way down south to the southern part of Pakistan or Baluchistan. So it's kind of a banana-shaped republic, or tribal territory as we call it. And physically, I found this very interesting. You literally left, when you went into the tribal territory like the Khyber Pass, you left Afghanistan and you weren't in Pakistan. You were in the tribal territory. In fact, the Paki authorities would collect 10 cents per person on the bus to give back to the tribal leaders as toll for going over the pass, which was their territory. The Pathans are basically nomads. Nomads are very free-spirited, free-thinking. You know, they've never been subjugated. Now, some have settled in villages. The concept is it's a very harsh environment where they go into these very high plateaus as high as 20,000 feet, where they have grazing, and they will take their flocks of sheep into these plateaus in the summertime, and they'll graze them, fatten them up, and then they'll run back into the desert in the wintertime. That's their incentive to do this nomadic track. So they travel as much as 1,000 miles. Well, you can imagine the harshness of going into the desert and then being in this extreme high mountain environment in the track back and forth. It's bred a physical individual that is so superior to anything. You know, I mean, they don't sit down unless you want to put a chair on your back and lug it with you everywhere you go. You're going to do the Asian squat, you know, where your ass is a few inches off the ground, you know, and then you're going to lay down on the rocks at night for a few hours because it's hard and cold and you got to get up before sunrise anyway, so sleep's not a big treat. So, and then the rest of the day, basically the men are guardians. They're the warriors. They're the ones that have kept the big bad wolf away from the door, so to speak. And the women do all the work.
We were
just a typical family with 3 kids and
The American dream.
The American dream. I just bought a business young and we lived the American life. And Chris, he took off on his own and he lived a life that was completely foreign to us. We didn't understand it necessarily.
He leaves and then he comes back with all these stories and film, and so it's always interesting. It's kind of like the Pied Piper coming home and telling us all the stories.
When I first went to Afghanistan in the 60s, one of the draws and one of the appeals to all the hippies that were traveling there, and I only differed in the sense that I carried a 16mm camera, was the hashish. As we have bars in every town and village and city in this country, they have hash dens. Muhammad said that drinking alcohol is a sin punishable by death. In the Quran, the description is the crowd is supposed to tear you into pieces and throw you into the trees for the birds to eat. That's the punishment for having a beer. But he didn't mention hash. And if you look at human nature and you look at man everywhere, he needs a release. So if alcohol was precluded from being that release, hash became that release. So normally a man was not allowed to smoke all the time. The nomads don't smoke at all because they don't even use black pepper. They can't do tobacco because you can't live a nomadic lifestyle and have any vices. You just die. But the village men and the wealthier people, they smoke on occasion. They smoke on pilgrimages. They smoke on weddings and parties of any sort.
I went to Kandahar, and I don't know why they smoke the biggest pipes, so I guess that's why I picked Kandahar. And I lived there. I stayed there, and I stayed there for months and months. And I finally was able to, through my own hash use, find the kind of keepers of the pipes. It wasn't everybody didn't have a pipe in the back of his house, but they did have pipe shops, you might call them. And it was always the same kind of weird character that was the keeper of the pipe, and he was a religious guy. He'd sit there with this tesbir, which is their rosary, that would maybe, a typical tesbir has 101 beads. His tesbir would have, 1,000. And you're supposed to go through your tesbir between each prayer. And you're praying 5 times a day. So do the math. That's a lot of, and going through the tesbirs like the rosary, you go, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, there's only one God. You go through a mantra over and over and over again with each bead.
So they're basically totally submersed in religion. They can't have worldly possessions. They can't have women. But they are allowed to smoke as much hash as they want.